So thank you, Sam. I think you did a wonderful introduction for us. So probably no need to really introduce much more about our expert panelists today, who obviously are coming from the key companies, let's say, within almost all of them for the broadcast landscape in the UK. I don't think that needs any introduction, so I'll just dive straight into the questions. I'm very excited to discuss the future of broadcaster streaming with you, because we've seen, of course, even in the last few years, I think quite big developments, changes. Channel 4, ITV have made substantial investments into the owned and operated platforms. And so having that in mind, and we did hear about that yesterday, even thinking about from ITV perspective, the challenges that brought with the live streaming of sports. What are the different strategies that you need to take? What does that mean for the organisation? But what do you see as being the next steps of growth? Akhila, maybe I'll ask you first, for the broadcasters in the streaming landscape.
Yeah, sure. So just to set some context, though, as you mentioned, we invested heavily in launching ITVX just over 2 years ago as part of our supercharged streaming strategy to help reach our sort of digital revenue targets. And we've seen really great success with the launch of ITVX. It's the UK's fastest growing streaming service. We've seen a growth of 45% in streaming hours since we launched. So it really is serving its purpose. And more than that, it's also more than 50% of the users who come in are under 55. So again, really attracting that younger audience that we are beginning to lose on the linear side of things. So I think it's really serving its purpose well. And I'm sort of looking forward. I think what we're doing is sort of innovating, and I will talk more about it, but on the product side of things with test and learn, we're looking at our distribution partnerships and how we can optimize those. But also from a content perspective, we were the first broadcaster to launch fast channels on the service. We have 12 of them. And again, those have served a very interesting purpose. We've seen that like almost 2/3 of the audience watching fast are under 55, so skewing very young. And if you look at the total television audience in this market, only 33% is under 55. So again, this platform really is serving its purpose to attract and retain and sort of keep the brand relevant with the younger viewers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're seeing it as part of a holistic strategy, essentially, to reach the audience across the different platforms, and then you're seeing that really has an impact on the type of, the different demographics, let's say, that you meet in the different distribution strategies.
Absolutely, yeah, trying to reach the audiences where they are.
Yeah. And Karla, is that, I assume it's something similar for you, but what's been your kind of journey and perspective on where it's going?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's worth calling out at the top that BVOD is growing, and it's growing faster than SVOD. Mm-hmm. So according to Barb data, iPlayer, ITVX, Channel 4 streaming, we all grew faster last year than the global streaming techs. And that's continuing into this year. And I think as public service broadcasters, we really have content with a purpose. So as Channel 4, we have quite a unique model in that we're commercially funded, but publicly owned. And all of our profits go back into supporting the UK creative economy. And as public service broadcasters, we have content with real purpose. So the success of shows like Merseyside Detectives, which was a great success and followed the horrific murders of Ashley and Olivia in Liverpool as a result of gun crime, that really underpins the kind of content that public service broadcasters are producing, that resonates with audiences and really forms part of the national conversation. And that's different to something that is aggregated and fully algorithmically served. We have a really, our approach is a responsible approach to tech, in that we feel like it's really important to retain that trusted voice in the way we curate content. And so we absolutely support data to enrich audiences, their viewing experience and enhancements in user interfaces. But it's really important that this kind of content is surfaced. And so growth is absolutely in content and content that resonates with audiences. But I think the key driving factor, and I guess I would say this as head of distribution, is distribution and discoverability. And we've seen that, viewing and attention is incredibly fragmented now, and I've heard that word fragmented said a lot over the last couple of days, but it means, and particularly as a young skewing public service broadcaster, we really need to be wherever audiences are, and so we're taking a much more holistic approach across our platforms and how we reach those audiences.
That's very interesting, actually. I think we can pick up a bit more on the balance between the discoverability and content, and where there's been in a sense, almost, content arms race, but in fact, how important is that versus being able to meet the audiences where they are. And I think that's obviously where Yorick, obviously you fit in from Everyone TV's perspective. We obviously have quite an international audience here, as we already heard this morning. So maybe first of all, you could explain to us about the inception of Freely, essentially. How did it come about, what the purpose is?
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, Victoria. So it's probably worth explaining a bit about what Freely is, and then we'll move on to how it came about. Freely was launched just under a year ago, and it's a new way to watch free-to-air TV all in one place on smart TVs over Wi-Fi. It's backed by my co-panelists here, but also Channel 5 and BBC, and it seeks to aggregate on-demand and live content from UK PSBs, but also free-to-air broadcasters in a single place on smart TVs. The reason I think it came about, or some of the rationale that came about, is both two trends and one consequence of that. One trend is the fact that people are and will continue to connect their TVs just to the internet, so no longer with an aerial or satellite. That's increasingly so. It's currently about a quarter of the UK population, well, households, about 24%, 5 million, and that's forecast to be over 70% over the next 10 years. So that's one trend. Second, the smart TV remains the most important device in the house to watch content. 84% of all viewing last year was on the smart TV. But the consequence of those two is the fact that until Freely was launched, there was no aggregated place to watch all UK PSB content, free-to-air content, in a single place for those households. And so Freely was the answer to that. And ITV for us, it was, or Everyone TV, formerly Digital UK, it's a natural extension to what we've done before. We have FreeSat, which provides free-to-air content over satellite to 1 million households. We have Freeview and Freeview Play, which is 50 million devices over DTT. So adding this third leg to the stool of transmission technologies, Freely was obviously the next natural step for us. And that collaborative nature of what we do it underpins everything we stand for. And the way it's changing, or we think it's changing the way that people are viewing, is the fact that through the deals we've been able to do with the manufacturers and OSs, and also the product that we've built, is it really looks to bridge that gap between the live and on-demand content that is produced either obviously linear or on VOD, because consumers don't necessarily, they just want to get to what they love and what they want as quickly as possible. And so we federate that and merchandise that within not just our app, but also throughout the UI. So, and we think it's going pretty well today.
Yeah. But I think, obviously it's a very, I think, different strategy than you see in many European markets. So I think it's really, really interesting to understand as well from your perspective, Karla, for example, what role has Freely played now in you really expanding out the audience and making sure that you reach people?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our role in Freely is really to support ETV in creating an environment that is premium, that is brand safe, and it's really built upon a kind of simple but enduring principle that Great British TV should be easily accessible and available to all audiences, and that no one is left behind as we move forward into a all IP future, that Great British content is universally available, and we're taking audiences on that journey from traditional to IP. So it's a really great demonstration of unique collaboration between public service broadcasters in the UK, which I think is unique globally.
Yes.
But not just collaboration between us, but collaboration between device partners, operating systems, content providers, many of which are in the room today, and without which, Freely wouldn't be a success. So, it's incredibly important to us.
Yeah. And I think the kind of collaboration and partnerships has been such a theme across the whole 2 days. And I think this is a really fantastic example of that in real life and what it's bringing as a value. As the world changes, we evolve. There's, as you're saying, the IP-driven viewing households and so on. So having that in mind, Akhila, how do you feel about, again, looking at the future, the role of ITVX as an owned and operated ecosystem, well, let's say ecosystem that you have, and then also expanding partnerships with third parties, let's say, so that you do, as you were talking about, the importance of reaching the audience in different places. Now it's fragmented. How do you see the role of the owned and operated versus the third parties?
Yeah, so owned and operated is still a priority, and we have big strategic pillars that support that. So like Karla, I represent distribution, which is, I think, a very crucial part in the future of our O&O, but also sort of third-party collaboration. We're sort of almost 100% sort of reach on UK platforms. So what we're focused on is now developing and deepening those partnerships with further catalog integrations, better metadata, but also partner marketing, making sure editorially the content is surfaced. So that's a really important pillar for us. But equally, from a content perspective, ITV has one content budget of over 1.2 billion pounds to sort of across both ITVX and the linear, sort of look at it as one really ecosystem. And looking at it, we have, a content strategy of what we call fireworks content that brings in like the big tentpole sort of series that brings in people, noisy. But then the bonfires, which are the ones which are like the box sets and the cozy movies that increase engagement once people are in. And then from a product perspective, we're always testing and learning. We ran apparently over 100 tests last year, just to improve the journeys. And we actually improved our registration flow so much that we saw an 850,000 sort of monthly active user increase just by improving that. So O&O is very important, and we are focused on having like a best-in-class experience there. But equally, I think we're quite pragmatic about the need to reach audiences where they are, as Karla was saying, and I'm sure we'll talk more about it, but we've done a YouTube deal as well, and we really are expanding our horizons where needed as well.
And just thinking about ITVX, you mentioned also the importance of the fast channels or kind of the role that they've played and the demographic that they skew to. I mean, how do you think about the overall, you talked about your fireworks, your bonfires, you've got fast channels, do you see kind of more development in the area of the different types of content that you would...
Yes, I mean, I think, again, test and learn is the way to sort of really adapt to a very quickly, fast-moving market. So we've obviously, there's sports as well, there's news, and from our premium, ITVX premium, we sort of brought in some third-party Hey You content, and we have a branded Hey You section. Again, really just expanding the content offering, driving new audiences in, again, partnering and opening up the ecosystem to third parties in that context. So, I think definitely there's a lot of work in strategy and trying to bring new audiences in.
And Karla, is it, I guess it's similar from your perspective in terms of the importance of having your own and operated platform, but also engaging with third parties?
Yeah. So, let's not forget that linear is still hugely important and highly valuable and still brings in the lion's share of revenues. But owned and operated is absolutely our priority. So our strategy, much like Akhila, is to accelerate digital, and we have a goal that 50% of our revenues will come from digital by 2030, and we're on track for that. So our owned and operated is absolutely our priority because it will always be a destination. It has the benefits of, it enables our sales sovereignty. You can hit large, diverse audiences in quick time that are brand safe, in a brand safe environment, rather than the kind of slower burn of other platforms. But also we can showcase the big hits, shows that might not be powering algorithms immediately because they haven't already had that kind of viewing to power that. So, but they're shows that we know are big and are going to be big, and so we can showcase those within our app alongside, our deeper catalogue and our remit driving shows, as well as the big hits. So it also, we've got the best user experience because it's an experience that we're driving. We can control that unique kind of tone of voice. But in terms of changing viewer habits and changing viewer need states and content lengths, I think it's all about broadening that ecosystem and adjusting our content for that audience, you know, no matter what platform they're on. And, you know, the Paralympics last year is a really good example of that, where we reached 20 million people, so a third of the population, and we generated over 40 million views across social platforms and YouTube. And that was really by taking a holistic view across our content. So we had our live coverage on linear, we had the best highlights on our owned and operated app, but then we also had 20 concurrent live streams on YouTube, as well as bespoke content for Snap and for TikTok. So across that, it enabled us to really reach much, you know, further across audiences. And it was our biggest share of voice in 12 years, which is, you know, great for Paris Olympics. So, you know, we're absolutely, like Akhila, you know, kind of testing what content works with what audiences, particularly on these new platforms, but alongside the traditional platforms that we've always worked with. So, yeah.
And how do you approach the, you know, you talked now exactly about multiple distribution platforms. How do you adapt the content? Do you adapt the content? Is it the same content in terms of the format, the scheduling? Do you take a different approach?
It's very much, you know, through experience and testing and learning what works where. You know, we'll come on to talking about YouTube in more detail, but really understanding it's not always the same content that works on your owned and operated that works on these other platforms. And of course you have, you know, vertical content, horizontal content, short form, mid form and long form all need to work, you know, collaboratively in harmony, exactly. So it's a case of testing, learning, different genres, channels, windowing, and data, and experts behind the scenes. So, you know, I have a very knowledgeable team in my distribution team, and they know these platforms inside out, and we've become really experienced in working with these platforms. So there's great opportunity for growth there.
Fantastic. And I guess all of this comes down to the fact that it's, you know, we're in this user-centric time now where really it is about the user being at the heart of everything that we do. And in that context, Yorick, do you see the aggregation of more content, for example, in Freely and kind of in general across broadcasters? Obviously, you've talked about having Heyu, for example, on the premium service for ITVX, but do you see aggregation as being also very important in terms of over delivering for the expectation of the user?
I think you know, to your earlier theme of collaboration partnerships, we wouldn't exist without that. You know, it's for what we stand for. And in terms of the user, it's by having that collaboration and bringing together that live and on-demand content from PSBs and free-to-air broadcasters, we can offer the width and breadth of content that we have. We've got over 75,000 hours of VOD content now in that singular experience. And I think in that sense, we bring value to the audience because they can find the content they love as quickly and easily as possible. But I think, we believe we bring value to our partners and our members as well, in the sense that they can target and reach a wider audience as broad as they want to. They get that through a singular, really good user experience, but also they're still free to follow their own monetization and app strategy within that. So we balance the fact that we can help them with the reach and target, but also still have their own strategies within that sort of concept.
And you talked about the fact that obviously you look at being the home of all of, let's say, free-to-air within the UK. So in that case, I guess kind of the strategy is also about making sure that you continue to deliver and kind of grow on that promise. Yes,
you know, as I said, we've made great strides in the past year. You know, we now have partnerships with nearly half of all OEMs, which present nearly half of all UK sales. We have over 40 live channels. We've launched 8 this year and 4 players. So we're still a year into our journey, so there's still more of that to do. And you know, we hope to expand that onto new smart TV manufacturers and get new content as quickly as possible. But so far, so good.
Yeah, in 1 year, I think huge, you know, it's really huge leaps and bounds have been made. And we've obviously kind of danced around a little bit YouTube. You know, that's another, I think, hot topic that always gets discussed, especially in the last few years at Connected TV, but we've heard about it in the last couple of days. Is it frenemy? Should we really embrace it? Do we need to be afraid? Is it just a distribution platform? Is it going to eat everybody alive? And obviously, Channel 4 have had, you know, have taken a proactive strategy in engaging with YouTube as our ITV in terms of, I think, recent announcement around December time with the strategy there. So I'd be really interested to hear your views on that. Akhila, I guess, starting with you, how did you make the decision to jump into partnering with YouTube?
Yeah, so I think as all broadcasters, we're always assessing what else we can do to grow and to, you know, drive incremental reach and audiences. And I think given YouTube's strategy and sort of looking at, you know, the market on the whole, it you know, it's a pragmatic way for us to sort of reach new audiences and revenue. So what we did is launch like hundreds of hours of content, short form and long form, across all genres. Again, test and learn. It's only been since December when we launched, so we're looking at the data very, very closely to understand what's doing well and what's really driving reach for us. We are sort of selling the ads ourselves. We've actually set up a YouTube sales team internally to do that. And for us, it really is about, you know, reaching, sort of having increased addressable reach, as well as an opportunity for advertisers to sort of have access to the ITV sort of premium broadcast safe content on a new platform. So that was sort of the rationale.
And is it also about using it as a tool to drive back to ITVX, for example, or do you find it very much a strategy where you meet a different audience and it's kind of incremental to the overall pie?
Yeah, I think it's more the latter. I do think it is about reaching new audiences that, you know, are not on ITVX, and I think that's one of the benefits of the partnership for us.
Fantastic. And Karla, I mean, obviously you've been collaborating with YouTube for quite some time. So what's your experience in that?
Yeah, I think firstly, you know, to categorise YouTube or any other media company as an enemy or frenemy, I think is quite, you know, too simplistic, really. You know, a great example is that we compete for content with Warner Brothers Discovery, but yet they entrust us to be their sales agent selling advertising against many. Excuse me. Against many of their channels. And so for us, really, YouTube changed in our priority when consumption habits started.
I think your mic's not working. Sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's cutting in and out.
Yeah, I can tell.
Maybe I can.
I can hear you great.
Yeah. There we go. There's the real deal.
Okay.
Thank you. Is that better?
Yeah.
Great, okay. So yeah, YouTube really changed in our priority when we could see consumption habits changing. So I think according to Barb data, adults are spending on average 5 hours a day watching video, and 34% of that is across social platforms and YouTube. And then when you look at younger audiences, that number grows. It's around, I think, 64%. And so, you know, it's really important to us as a young skewing PSB that we're reaching those audiences. And so 2 years ago, we were really using YouTube as a marketing tool to push back to owned and operated for sure. And then we hypothesized that we could reach new incremental audiences on YouTube. And so we agreed a partnership whereby, you know, like ITV now, we're selling our own ads. So it provides advertisers, you know, a premium sell across social and not just across our linear and owned and operated. And, you know, we spent a year testing and learning in this space, really testing different genres, different channels, different kind of content lengths and windowing to see what worked. It's really, you know, using data to understand how best to optimize across YouTube. And we've seen huge growth. So across our total viewing, so we're still publishing short form and clips to use as marketing to push back to O&O. And our total viewing, I think, was up about 105%, but then our long-form clips were up 169% last year. So we achieved over 110 million views, and our revenue is also up 78%. So we're seeing huge growth there. But with any partnership, you have to ensure there's a fair value exchange, right? So sales sovereignty is really important to us. We can sell against our ads. We're also now increasingly representing the sales for other distributors and producers. So there's a real opportunity there, and advertisers want more of it because it's a young audience. So, you know, it just becomes part of our sell. We have a social sales team at Channel 4. We're working with our existing agencies and advertisers to, you know, add this inventory to their current buy, but we're also reaching out and just finding new advertisers, because depending on the KPIs for their campaign, you know, it's a really good blend and marketing mix to hit audiences fast and owned and operated, but then also reach youngs in a different way across different kinds of content. So, yeah, it's working well.
And we touched on, I think you mentioned it a bit earlier, the importance of distribution, let's say, and those partnerships, and the importance of content. Do you foresee a world where you really are also tailoring more and more, let's say, different formats or different genres of content on those different distribution platforms?
Yeah, I mean, across our social platforms, you know, on YouTube, we've got the majority of our full episodes we're now publishing, but we also have a digital original commissioning strategy. So we're creating bespoke content, social first content. But, you know, it's interesting. It's not always the same content that works really well on our owned and operated that is working well on YouTube. It can be different and reach slightly different audiences. So it's something that we're always looking at and experimenting with, particularly on these new platforms and how they evolve. Yeah, it's super important.
Yeah. I guess, Akhila, it's the same
Yeah,
for you as well.
It's very similar. I'd echo what Karla says, and I mean, not to keep repeating it, but testing and learning is, I think, the use of data right now. The access to data is really important as we map out our strategy, both from a content and sort of distribution perspective.
So far, we're monitoring data really closely to ensure that the audiences were additive and not cannibalising our owned and operated. And so far what we've seen is that when the content drops on YouTube after it's been on linear and our owned and operated, in some cases we see an uplift. It's certainly not cannibalising. So we're confident that these audiences are incremental to our current and a key driver of growth.
I think that's a really interesting learning as well, because if you'd had that conversation maybe 5 years ago, there would have been a lot more fear of collaborating in that way, thinking that it would cannibalise rather than an understanding that it's actually additive. So I think that's a great learning for many markets as well. So to sum up, I guess, let's get out the crystal ball and I'd love to hear your thoughts on, let's say 5 years, let's say 2030, where do you see broadcaster streaming being? Is it going to be primarily through the owned and operated system? Is it going to be more about partnerships? Yorick, maybe we can start with you.
Probably wouldn't know what I'm going to say about this one, but I think towards 2030, I think many things will change, but some things will remain fundamentally the same. People will still continue to connect their TV to the internet and not necessarily or satellite dish. Smart TV will remain the most important TV in the household, and people will still want to watch high quality, free to air, British TV. BVOD set to grow 7% year on year for the next 5 years. And in that sense, the challenge will be is the age-old challenge of getting viewers to the content they love as quickly and easily as possible. And in a world of infinite choice for them and walled gardens, it's platforms like Freely which will really win out and secure the future for free TV. So I think that's the direction of travel we see.
Yeah, so really the discoverability and that user experience where you can deliver something completely different. Okay, very interesting. Karla?
Yeah, I think really just to repeat what I said at the start, it's really about public service broadcasters continuing to commission content that really resonates with audiences, but ensuring that it reaches those audiences and that we're taking audiences on that journey from, traditional broadcast through to watching TV over IP, ensuring that our content is discoverable. We want universal availability on a platform agnostic basis, but there also needs to be fair value exchange there too. So, it's really important to us that we're representing our own sales, that we have prominence and discoverability of, the kind of great British heritage of public service broadcasting.
But yeah, essentially the value that you bring in telling those incredibly relevant local stories that only, as a PSB, or let's say being very British, that you can do. You see that as being the core, let's say, more than, and then it's you distribute to where the audience is, but it's bringing them in for the...
Yeah, it's both. It's being exactly where audience is and broadening that ecosystem across, so that, fans of our content are finding that content wherever it may be, but ensuring that, public service content that really resonates with audiences is discoverable.
Yeah.
As I said at the start, a really responsible approach to tech, so that we're not just relying on algorithms to serve content that has gained traction and viewing, but the broadcasters like ITV and Channel 4, the shows that we know are going to be big, that we can ensure we retain some editorial curation there and that they reach audiences.
Yeah, human versus
Yes,
machine
it's
at the end of the day, isn't it?
Like, surprised we want humans
Yeah.
to be working alongside data,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's really the best experience and allows us to retain that kind of trusted curation.
Fantastic. Akhila?
So just to really echo the group, and in fact to echo what Priya actually said in the sort of early morning session, I think in terms of trends, it'll be an extension of the trends we see now. So there'll be more IP viewing, there'll be more VOD viewing. Our real challenge, I think one of our challenges is also the young audience, like bringing in and keeping our brands and the importance of the broadcasting and the PSPs, as Karla said, sort of relevant with the youth audiences. So I think being, again, to sound repetitive, but like where the audiences are, expanding our ecosystem is important, and in that then partnerships, I think, play a very important role. So I think that's sort of looking in the future. I think the trends will continue, but partnerships will be a very important part of the success.
So you can essentially foresee even broader partnerships, let's say, in order to, as the audience changes, as people grow up, that you can see even expanding the partnerships that you have today.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, well, thank you very much. It's been wonderful to have, I think, our panel of experts. So a huge thank you to Yorick, Karla and Akhila. And thank you for all of your attention.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you.